Welcome to this edition of Security and Compliance Weekly. Today we welcome Naomi Buckwalter, Virtual CISO, Director of Information Security by day, and also the founder and executive director of an organization called the Cybersecurity Gatebreakers Foundation. We are going to discuss the cybersecurity skills gap, or lack thereof, how we can solve the perceived shortage of talent in our industry, and how Naomi believes that there's a gatekeeping issue in our industry. Who knows? By the end of this discussion, we might just add breaking down gates to our tagline. So join us as we continue our journey of tearing down silos and building bridges on Security and Compliance Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. And now, it's the show that bridges the requirements of regulations, compliance, and privacy with those of security. Your trusted source for complying with various mandates, building effective programs, and current compliance news. It's time for Security and Compliance Weekly. Some things are best kept secret. You wouldn't send your company's financial data through the mail on a postcard. Then why would you let your employees use insecure collaboration and file share tools to share sensitive business information? Introducing Crossclave, a file sharing and collaboration solution built secure from the ground up. Think Signal, only designed specifically for business and enterprise users. Crossclave uses blockchain technology and end-to-end encryption to deliver a true zero-trust system designed to protect you and your business's most valuable data. So if you need to share sensitive information, SpiderOak's Crossclave is your only choice. Go to securityweekly.com/SpiderOak and get a free account with 5 gigabytes of storage.
Welcome to Security and Compliance Weekly. This is episode 83, and we are recording live on August 17th, 2021. I'm your host, Mr. Jeff Mann. Joining me remotely as usual are my co-hosts, Mr. Scott Lyons, Mr. Josh Marpet, and Mr. Frederick Flea Lee. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
In fact, we're working on getting Scott back on. He had a few technical difficulties, so we're doing a little bit of reboot. So I'm going to stall by giving you a couple announcements. The Cyber Risk Alliance, in partnership with InfraGard, has launched the Critical Infrastructure Resilience Benchmark Study. You can measure your readiness for ransomware by completing the survey and getting your score. Go to securityweekly.com/CIRB to take the survey and get your results. Coming up on August 26th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, you can learn how to implement cloud security in a way that actually works, which implies that people are doing it wrong. So if you want to do that, you need to go to securityweekly.com/webcasts and register now. Also, of course, if you've missed any of our previously recorded webcasts or technical trainings, they are available for your viewing pleasure at securityweekly.com/on-demand. All right, enough of that. Our guest today, as mentioned previously, is Naomi Buckwalter. Naomi was brought to actually Scott and my attention. We were having a conversation a month or so ago with somebody else who will be a future guest on the show. And he mentioned Naomi and said, you got to check her out. So we did. And then we invited her on the show. And now here she is. So Naomi, welcome to Security and Compliance Weekly.
I'm excited. It's episode 83. Congratulations. I love the prime number. And I'm excited to be here. Yeah.
Every other time we have a potential of a prime number, that it's not always the case. But thanks for displaying your geekiness right at the outset by acknowledging our prime membership.
Yeah, I should dial that back.
No, not at all.
Right.
It's awesome.
No. You're in good company, unfortunately, or not. We'll take it from there. But while we're on the topic, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got your start in cybersecurity, and ultimately we'll get around to your foundation. But tell us how you got to be a virtual CISO, at least.
Oh yeah, happy to talk about myself, Jeff. My name's Naomi. Hey everyone, thanks for listening today and spending your time with us. I've been in tech and security for over 20 years. If you're watching me on video, yes, I do look a little young. I blame that on my genetics. So yes, I am 40 years old. And I've had experiences doing a little bit of everything. Started out as an application developer way back in the day when Lotus Notes was still a thing. Moved into Java mid-tier. We called it Spring MVC, if you remember that. Moved into application security, did some security engineering, architecture, and did some incident response, a little bit of privacy. Now I'm in my third role as the security leader, or CISO, however you want to call it, for a mid-sized business. And the one that I'm in now is called Beam Technologies, and our mission is to do smarter dental care. And I would say I love it. Like, there's plenty to do here in the small and mid-sized realm. There's so much to do, so much to learn, so much to grow. And if you guys are thinking about becoming a security leader, I highly suggest trying to be one in a smaller mid-sized company. You get to do so much. It's amazing.
Well, it's interesting that you entice people into becoming a security leader. I think most of us are trying to figure out whether we're even security professionals and what that means. So, to jump forward a little bit, you're also the founder of a organization called Cybersecurity Gatebreakers Foundation, which is the bulk of the conversation today. But give us a little bit of a tease about what this organization's about and why you felt compelled to start it.
Yeah, happy to. So it's called Cybersecurity Gatebreakers Foundation, and we are here to win the war on cybercrime by dismantling the myth that there is a skills gap or a skills shortage. I believe there is no skills gap. I believe there's a demand gap in the minds and the hearts of hiring managers and cybersecurity professionals and executives. So if we can convince people who are in our roles as security leaders and as veterans of cybersecurity, if we can convince them that it's important and easy to hire and train the next generation of cybersecurity professionals, we will win the war on cybercrime. So as you know, in this asymmetric war where there's one malicious actor or one bad group, APT group, they can take down an entire eastern seaboard of the United States for gasoline, right? Like, it's an asymmetric war. One bad actor can do many bad things. We need more defenders. Clearly, the numbers are against us. And we all know the numbers: 314,000 unfilled jobs in the United States, over 3 million, depending on who you ask, around the world. And those numbers are just increasing. I think by 2025, there's a report by Forbes that says cybercrime is going to be a $1 trillion industry if it's not already. And breaches are constantly happening. And if you see kind of what's happening in the world, and this is where I'm trying to get to, I can see a world where, in a future where cybercrime is just happening all the time, and it's going to continuously bleed out of the virtual world into the physical world. And that's a future that I do not want to see. And so I started this foundation knowing exactly this. I can see a future, and I have a vision of a future where my children and my grandchildren are now suffering on the daily because they can't trust where their water, if their water is pure, or if their electricity is going to be constant, right? Like, all these things that we take for granted now can be affected in the very near future if we continue to let this trend of cybercrime happening. And it's not just data. We always talk about this. Oh, it's just data. It's okay. It's not anything like that. But it's increasingly getting worse. Like, there's a story I tell quite often about a mid-size, or not mid-size, in the Midwest. There's a police station that got hacked. And the cyber criminals stole some photos of crime scenes and had some murders in there and some blood and everything else, like pretty gross stuff. And the cyber criminals went up to the police station and the detectives there, and they're like, hey, we're going to release these photos if you don't pay us a ransom. So a different type of ransomware, if you think about it. Now, the police station actually said, well, heck no, we don't have that kind of money. We're not insured for that. So they go away, right? F off. Do we curse here on this show? Maybe.
Oh, absolutely.
I won't. Fuck off then.
Really?
Yeah, like so. And then the cyber criminals, what did they do? Well, they're going to get their money somehow. So they went to the victims' families. So the victims' families are now victimized twice. Once when their loved ones were murdered. Now another time when the cyber criminals are like, if you don't pay us, we're going to release these photos out into the world. And they did. And so that is just one of many examples where people's real lives are now affected because of cybercrime. It's not just data anymore.
Naomi, can I ask you a question? And I'm going to go back to the start of what you said.
Josh.
Ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. We just have to squeeze in the hot seat question.
My apologies.
And then we can dive into this, as we're all kind of chomping at the bit, I think. Naomi, we ask all of our guests to come on the show because this is a show called Security and Compliance Weekly, and we try to speak to both audiences, as it were, and really try to enlighten each audience that there's another audience out there. We ask simply what we call the hot seat question, and there's no right or wrong answer. This is just your opinion, giving us a chance to get to know your mindset a little bit. Where do you fall on what we like to call the security versus compliance continuum?
Yeah, so you're asking, am I more risk-based or compliance-based? I am very certainly in the camp of being more risk-based. I think it's the better way of evaluating risk. And as security professionals, we are just managers of risk, and we are enablers of the business. Now, is compliance a terrible thing? No, there's in some ways, compliance and security can play along really nicely. But I think AJ Yan says it best, compliance does not equal security, but security always equals compliance. So if you have good security, you'll always be in compliance with whatever frameworks that you're trying to comply with or whatever laws and regulations. But if you're just compliant, you're just trying to check the box, sometimes you're going to miss the mark on actual good security. So I am clearly on the risk-based side. I appreciate compliance, I will say, but it's not the end all.
It's okay that you're wrong. It's not a problem.
Go ahead, Josh.
Not a
now
problem
ask your
until
question.
it is.
No, we can discuss that later. I have a very different view, but I understand where you're coming from, but it's cool. We'll talk about it later. But no, I do have a question about what you said earlier. You mentioned that there is not a skills gap, there is a demand gap. And you said that there are unfilled jobs. And so I'm a little confused, and maybe I'm just thinking about it backwards, but it would seem that there is a demand. So if there is a demand, where's the demand gap? Maybe I'm misunderstanding?
Okay, that's a really great question because I need to clarify. There is a demand gap at the mid-senior and senior levels. There is less of a demand gap at the entry-level position. So I analyzed 1,000 LinkedIn jobs about a year ago, and I found out only 12.5% of these 1,000 jobs in cybersecurity are for entry level or tagged as entry level. Now, when I dug into the job descriptions, and I literally did this, I found on average, more than 50% of them require 5 years of experience just to get started in an entry-level role or a role that was tagged as entry-level. Now, not only that, 5 years of experience, it required a master's degree and a CISSP. Now, if you know about the CISSP, you already need to be in cybersecurity in order to be a CISSP holder. So that kind of got me thinking, well, it's not just anecdotal evidence at this point. I have the pure data, and it says over half of entry-level jobs in cybersecurity require years of experience. Is that common sense? No, it is not. So my entire foundation is trying to say, let's make sure we can hire and train the next generation of cybersecurity professionals, because cybersecurity professionals aren't just going to pop out of the ground, guys. We're not groundhogs. They're not just going to be ready to go and jump into a mid-senior and senior level. The demand is, yes, we need more mid-senior and veterans, and we need those people who know what they're doing, but they're never going to get there unless we take the curious and the hungry and the passionate and the people who are be amazing contributors if we were just to give them a chance. And that's what I'm seeing. I talked to so many different people throughout the pandemic. I've just mentees and everything. I've just been so inspired by them, but they're not being given a chance. And I just don't know why. I'm like, you are amazing. You are way better than I ever was at your age. You're building home labs, you're writing blogs, you're doing YouTube things, and you're going to webinars and conferences. And I just don't get it. And it just like rips my heart out because I know we're losing this war. And I know the only way we can win is if we have more people. It doesn't matter what kind of person it is. It doesn't have to be a person with a technical background or a CS degree or anything. Like I literally took an opera singer, and I hired her as a technical writer as an intern. She wrote all her IT security playbook. She actually had the first one done within the first week because guess what, guys? It is not brain surgery. Like it is not rocket science.
It's not rocket surgery at all. I totally agree. And I actually have an intern currently at my nonprofit that's a day trader. And he still day trades. We're getting him up to speed on that, and he wrote an article on ransomware that I'm going to be submitting to SC Magazine for him, and he's writing processes and procedures for us. So I totally get it and understand. So if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is the demand gap is the demand for entry level people is so low that it's hard for people to break into the industry because there's just nowhere for them to break into. Am I correct?
We all know this. Yeah, I'm just saying the obvious. We all know this, but I have the data to back it up. And when I did see that, when I saw the data itself, my heart just sank because I knew we were never going to reach the point where we can fill 314,000 unfilled jobs minus the 12.5%. We're never going to get there unless we start training and mentoring that next generation. And do we have enough people to do that within our ranks? Do we have enough people with that mindset of helping? I don't know.
Naomi,
and I want to
try. Devil's advocate. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second.
Do it.
You said that there is a demand gap, and you have data to back it up, which is awesome, by the way. Well done, if you don't mind me saying so. And so there's no demand for entry-level people. And yet your strategy is to train and mentor people to become entry-level people. But you're not addressing the demand gap. If you're training them to
No. I'm training the trainers. I am not training the entry-level people. The entry-level people are fine. They're perfect the way they are. I need to train the teachers. I need to mentor the teachers. That's what this foundation is doing. We are addressing the demand side.
Okay, yeah, so you're trying to
100% agree with that. Like one of the statistics, talking about data, it's something like less than 10% of security professionals are 29 years old or younger, right? So it's literally just nothing but a bunch of like old, worn out people like myself in the industry. And you're 100% right. I got started in security when I was a teenager. And it's weird now that a lot of our criteria make these demands that are almost impossible to fill for skills that we actually know people actually do have. And I love the example of kind of like the opera singer who's actually really good at communication, really good at actually understanding humans and nuance, actually going out and actually writing things and actually helping the security team. I am so here for this conversation. I wish I could be more controversial.
No. I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate.
Okay with it, yeah.
I'll take that job. It's okay. But Naomi,
and I'll say, I hired my opera singer after here's the thing, I'll never tell her this, but I didn't think she could pass her Security Plus in 2 months. Like, I was like, if you can pass your Security Plus in 2 months, I will offer you a job. And I was like, I probably just went too far. There's no way she can do this, right? She blew my expectations out of the water. She studied, she took a dozen practice exams. She made hundreds of flashcards, studied for hours, right? And this is all after hours, right? She did her full-time job for us and then went back and did all the studying. So she crushed it. I had no idea that this was even possible. And then I started thinking, she's not unique. There's so many people just like her. And here's another thing, and not a lot of people know this, but when I opened up the internship position, I didn't make it a public thing. Like, I only announced it to like 3 different Facebook groups, right? And I did that on purpose because I was like, I don't want to reject 100,000 people anyway. So why don't I just reject like the smallest amount of people possible? But what ended up happening was we got a huge number of diverse candidates just from posting in those 3 Facebook groups, the opera singers and a couple others, communities of color and stuff. But like we actually got a really great set of candidates. And when we did some blind hiring practices, we took out the unconscious bias, we ended up with one military vet, middle-aged white guy. We had 3 females. One was 2 were opera singers. One was a female of color. One was a student. Like, there's just so many things to talk about and uncover here, but I'm kind of just rambling. But do you see what I'm trying to say? I don't think Jessica was unique in any way. I think she's special, yes. But are there many Jessicas? Yes. Yes, there are. And if we can just find them and train the trainers and teach them what to look for, and then give them resources to like, here's what you do with this person, and here's how they can provide return on investment day one, which is what you're looking for anyway. And here's how you train the next generation. Let's do it. Let's do this.
Yeah. Okay. I want to take a moment. Hold on, Josh. Sorry.
Okay.
I just want to level set a little bit, because this is a nagging question that I've had for months, if not years, when people talk about the skills shortage and the job shortage for cybersecurity roles. And it may seem like a silly, maybe even pedantic question, but what exactly are we talking about in terms of cybersecurity roles or jobs? What are some examples of the roles that we're trying to fill?
Well, if you look at any department that has cybersecurity underneath their purview, it's really anything that has to do with the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data and systems. So if you want to hire somebody, give them very low entry-level grunt work. There's grunt work in every single specialty and subspecialty in cybersecurity. I challenge you, even in my role as a security leader, I have plenty of grunt work, and I would rather just ship that off to somebody who I know I can just tell what to do, and then give them spaces to learn and to grow safely, and then have them do it. Like, I don't want to have to waste my time filling out security questionnaires. Like, that's not something I want to do. That is grunt work for somebody else.
Is the grunt work typically involve writing?
Yeah, in a lot of cases. And that's why the intern was hired for technical writing. And no, she didn't know how to write technically, but I could train her. She's a good writer. You know, you can break down arguments, you can find things, you can think critically about things. And so that's all I needed. And those are the skills that are hard to train. Think of all the human skills and the people skills that a lot of people just don't have, especially in cybersecurity. And believe me, I used to be one of them. I used to be rude and smug and just glib and like all these things that you see in a lot of different cybersecurity professionals. And I used to be that way because I was deeply insecure about myself. I used to have to pretend to be the smartest person in the room. And that hurt me like so much in my career. The second that I had something happened to me where I was just humbled beyond belief, I started realizing I don't know everything and I need to improve. And once I had that growth mindset and understanding that to be a better person and to be a better security person, I need to be more self-aware and understand what my strengths and weaknesses are, and then really work on myself. And I realized I am the common denominator to all my problems. Why am I blaming other people for my problems? Why am I not getting headcount? Why am I not getting resources or budget? It's because of me. Like, I am not doing a good job explaining to the business what we need, explaining what the risk is, and getting them on board, winning their hearts and minds. Once I realized this, I'm like, wow, the sky's opened up. Angels started singing, and I said, that's what I need to do. And it's been night and day ever since.
I do have a controversial take. And this is, Naomi, I would actually challenge you on your phrasing here. I don't believe, I think that calling it grunt work is actually negative and dismissive of what, a lot of these people are actually doing. A lot of it is really actually supplying that connective tissue inside of a security organization and for that broader organization. And in particular, some of those areas that we often neglect to polish fully, like policy writing is one of those areas we often neglect to really do a good job of. Things like vuln management is one of those areas where I've seen a lot of entry-level people be extremely successful. And it's one of those areas where oftentimes we just actually kind of, get it started, but don't actually really finish it and polish it. And so actually I view a lot of this work as being additional work for actually people that can come in and help polish things and really help complete things. And I hope that there aren't people out there who view these kind of roles as being diminutive or maybe, like small, which is actually really, really valuable roles. And it's how a security program really scales inside of a company.
Yeah, you're right. And I shouldn't say the word grunt work. I just do that for like shock value, I guess. I agree with you there. I'm going to change my phrasing. Thank you. And I agree. So especially for a small and mid-sized company like mine, we don't have security automation. We don't have that SOAR, right? Like the amazing acronym. We have a lot of manual processes. Like, for example, my cybersecurity analyst, Jessica, now she looks at our DMARC reports and we have everything filling into report URI. And, I have her take a look at it every day. Like, those are the kind of things that I don't want to spend my time doing. I would rather have someone like Jessica learn and grow in a safe space, like reading our DMARC report.
Well, is there an implication? I'm cutting you off again.
No, it's my turn.
No, it's my turn because it's my show, and then I will let you. I just want to make an alternative observation, and anybody can weigh in, including Naomi. What you said and what Flea called you on in terms of the grunt work, to me, I heard that there's, and I think this is pervasive in our industry, there's an implication, whether you meant it or not, that there's more value in a quote unquote technical role or a technical task versus a non-technical task.
It hurts me so much anytime I hear somebody say technical versus non-technical in security. And please, I definitely want to hear your perspective on this, Naomi. I think that's a misnomer and actually just an outright lie. If you're in security, by definition, it's a technical role. You're always are doing technical work inside of security. In order to be effective, you have to understand the technology behind some of the things that you do inside of corporations. Are there things that require different disciplines from a technology standpoint? Yes. Can you take an opera singer and overnight make them a reverse engineer? Well, maybe not. I don't think it's actually outside of the grasp of somebody from that background. But I do think it's harmful for us in an industry to have this idea that there are technical and non-technical roles. And maybe that's also partially because we have this, we actually kind of see like being technical as a badge of honor, and being non-technical is almost dismissive and derogatory. And actually, I see them even because we actually think about the overall impact, because our goal in security is delivering secure outcomes. Both of these people, like people from all, all walks of life, whether technical or quote unquote non-technical, they all are there to help deliver secure outcomes. And I think that's actually the thing that we should index more on, as opposed to, hey, is this person a good C++ developer, et cetera. That's my you're touching a nerve there, Jeff.
I'm going to smack you just a little bit. And I'm not going to smack you, Flea. I'm just going to point out that your definition of security may be very different than other people's. I've talked to a lot of people that their definition of security is you're a pen tester, right? No. Well, then you're not in security. And that's because that's been a cultural thing for the InfoSec world. Are you security if you do forensics? Are you security if you do technical writing for a security team? Let's say you're the technical writer for a red team. I would argue, of course, you're doing security, and I think you would too, Flea. But I think the base problem there is the definition of security is very different for very people. And the unconscious biases, I don't think it's bias is the right word, but the unconscious sort of scripting of what is security is very different for different people. And so
it's biased. You're sort of hitting the nail on the head, but you're a little bit off center. Realistically, in our community, it's always been the technical people that have done the work and the non-technical people that have been relegated or related to management. So
you're wrong.
Everything
is security.
Whenever we have somebody that's coming up into management, we say, oh, well, then your technical skills are going out the window because you don't use them. So,
but that's wrong.
Trying to make that correlation
in different ways. You're absolutely wrong, Scott. I'm terribly sorry.
No, well, it depends how you define technical. I mean, I have not been hands on a keyboard other than writing Word documents and spreadsheets in probably 17 years, and I say I'm not technical, and people argue with me and say, well, yes, you are. Sure you do, because you understand ones and zeros. But so I think it all has to do with how you define technical. But I think we're touching on part of the issues and problems that are just sort of, part of the fabric and the undercurrent of our industry, which is what creates these problems where there are no entry-level jobs. There's only the mid-level. I mean, this industry began with no entry level. Everybody was coming to it from somewhere else, already having a background in something. And that's, I think that's possibly one reason why the job postings are mid-level, because you need to have, or at least there's a perception, and I'm willing to be corrected on this, Naomi. There's a perception that you need to have some sort of prerequisites in order to get into this field of cybersecurity.
No, the prerequisites came in when recruiters started recruiting. Yeah. They said, how are we doing this in other industries? We're going to mimic this over here, and we're going to hope that it's effective.
Naomi, what do you think? Correct all of us.
So much to say. Yeah. I'm just waiting for you guys to talk. So let's. All right. So I want to address. I just want to address one thing. Somebody mentioned that technical people have more value than a non-technical person. And I will explain this to you. Think about how we treat each other in society. Who is the higher paying people? Is it the teacher or is it the software engineer? Is it a person who cleans bathrooms or is it a person who cleans logs, right? That's the only analogy I can. Now, the reason why is because we end up venerating and paying people more, the more they act like computers. So the more they act non-human, we give them more money. The more they act for humans or as a human, teaching, mentoring, coaching, taking care of people, stay-at-home parents, we give them less money. And why is that? Because our entire value in society is fucked up. Like, we literally have no idea what we're doing. We're like, here's $300,000 and you can be a security engineer. And here's $30,000 to teach and mold the brains of our children. Like, that is fucked up. How is that not fucked up? And so that is my one core argument. Yeah. The reason why we do see, and I agree, we do value technical people over non-technical people because of that reason, because society says it's okay to venerate the people who act more like computers than the people who care for the human side of ourselves.
No, I just want to know. Unfortunately, C-levels are putting a lot of money towards tools versus people and process, and that's why we're saying that we put the technical people above because they know how to run the tools. Fight me.
I just want to ask, and it's somewhat of a rhetorical question. When Naomi drops her microphone and it bounces, does that lose its effect and impact?
No, it'll go because it's a snowball.
because it's a snowball. Hey, we're just getting into it, but we need to take a break. So we'll come right back and jump back into this very heated and interesting conversation that we're having. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
We're proud to announce CISO Stories, a new podcast series in partnership with Cybersecurity Collaborative and Cyber Reason. CISO Stories features the candid perspectives and experiences of frontline senior security executives and dives deep into timely security topics. CISO Stories is hosted by Todd Fitzgerald, VP of Cybersecurity Strategy at Cybersecurity Collaborative, and Sam Curry, Chief Product and Security Officer at Cyber Reason. Listen weekly as they speak with extraordinary CISOs by visiting securityweekly.com/CSP.
Welcome back to Security and Compliance Weekly. Hey, InfoSec World 2021 is proud to announce its keynote lineup for this year's in-person event. Hear from, I looked up this name pronunciation earlier and I forgot it already, Robert Herjavec, plus heads of Herjavec, whoever he is.
Shark Tank guy, yeah.
Yeah, I don't watch Shark Tank. I don't know who it is. Also, heads of security at the NFL, heard of it. TikTok, heard of it. U.S. Department of Homeland Security, heard of it. Stanford University, heard of it. And more. Plus, Security Weekly listeners save 20% on World Pass and main conference registration. How do you take advantage of that discount? Visit securityweekly.com/ISW 2021 and register now. Also, in case you haven't heard, Security Weekly Unlocked will be held in person this December 5th through 7th at the Hilton Lake Buena Vista. That's in Florida, by the way. Bring your masks and bring your vaccination cards, even though nobody will ask you for them. We're excited to announce our first round of speakers, who will include Leslie Carhart, David Kennedy, Alyssa Miller, O'Shea Bowens, Marina Chiavata, did I say that right? Patrick Coble, Chris Eng, Eric Escobar, Nick Leghorn, Michael Schlatt, Kevin Johnson, and, can you believe it, Justin Kohler. Want to be part of the action? Go to securityweekly.com/unlocked to register and check out more about our lineup of speakers. All right. Want to jump back into the discussion. Fascinating picture that you've been painting so far, Naomi, and I wanted to share very briefly something that I've been thinking about. I'm giving a talk in a month at a conference in person live. So exciting! It's been so long. But my topic is sort of on the topic of how do you become a professional, but more finely tuned towards. I think what Scott alluded to earlier is, security. You mean you're a pen tester, hackers, all that kind of thing. I am often asked, how did I get my start in this profession? And I got my start working at NSA, the National Security Agencies. So the question really is, how did I get a job at NSA? And what I've been thinking about lately, and hopefully this will help spark the discussion for this segment, is I was hired at NSA back in it'll be 25, I'm sorry, it was 35 years ago, in a month, in a time when NSA was hiring computer scientists, mathematicians, and engineers. That's all they wanted to hire. If you had those degrees, they recruited all the major colleges and universities throughout the country. Graduate with that degree, boom, you had a job, higher paying pay scale than the regular rank and file. I actually went through a different route. I heard that they were hiring, filled out an application, was invited to Fort Meade to take a couple days worth of aptitude tests, a battery of kind of skills tests, and based on my scores, they hired me. So I was none of those mid-level, if we can extend the analogy, mid-level experience. I didn't have a CISSP. I didn't have this degree, that certification, that training, all that. I simply scored well on a test. And what I've been trying to do a little bit of research on or think about, and I think this is, I hope this is what you're getting at with your foundation, is how do you recognize the potential, the aptitude, the talent in people without them having necessarily a degree or a training or a cert, but just the raw potential. I'm trying to figure that out because NSA clearly had it figured out. It's why they hired me. I went on and had a somewhat successful career, did some things, yada yada. It's not about me, but what I'm trying to figure out is, how did NSA do it? How did they know to what skills tests to give, what things that they see? What I do know anecdotally is NSA always liked to hire people with liberal arts degrees. They liked to hire, and I think this is more from a national security perspective, they like to hire people from Utah. a particular religion, because they were good and wholesome and less likely to do the bad things that they could be compromised over. But that's not really relevant to the conversation. But what are, to kick off the discussion for this segment, what are some of the things that we need to look for, or you're trying to train the trainers, the ones that are trying to hire people? What are the things we need to be looking out for to recognize people as having the aptitude or the potential for succeeding in careers, whether they're technical or non-technical, or if there is such a thing, so on and so forth? Go.
Yeah, I love this question. I'll turn it right back around to you, Jeff, because the NSA certainly didn't knock on your door in the middle of the night asking you to apply to this thing. You self-selected yourself, did you not? Did you not go up and say, hey, I'd like to join? So at some point you had an interest, right? Or literally, nice. Did they find you fishing or whatever you were doing, like just chilling out on a Saturday, right? Did you self-select or...
That's an interesting question. I grew up in Maryland. NSA's in Maryland. I never heard of it. Back in the day, it was a very clandestine, low-profile organization. So frankly, when I applied to it, I really didn't know what they did. I did know that they had something to do with code breaking, and if it was self-selecting, and I've only figured this out in the last couple years as I try to answer this question, how did you end up there? I grew up in a family that liked to do puzzles, and crossword puzzles, crypto quizzes, everything that used to be in the Dell Crossword Puzzle magazine, if anybody's ever heard of that. And in particular, those books had logic problems. And in a cosmic karmic event, my first job at NSA was in a cryptologic shop on the InfoSec side. So we were creating crypto systems rather than breaking them. And my mentor was a very well-established, brilliant man to this day, probably still the smartest person I've ever met, cryptologist. He was a cryptographer. He did the code-breaking stuff, but he moonlighted on the InfoSec side of the house. And this is the karmic event, he, as a side job, used to write the logic problems for Dell Crossword Puzzle magazine. So it was full circle for me right from the very beginning.
Maybe they were tracking you this entire time.
Well, perhaps.
It was a leading question because, honestly, Jeff, I like you as a human. I think you're extremely amazing. But are you that unique? Are you the only person within your Maryland suburb or wherever you grew up doing those crossword puzzles and logic puzzles? Are you unique where somebody just like you down the street could not have also done the same job as you? Like you were given a mentor, you're given training, you're working alongside amazing people. Could somebody else just like you with your background experiences and your life do the same thing? Question. Yes or no?
No, I am that unique, but I'm the exception to the rule.
So if you are that unique, I would say in cybersecurity, I don't think it can't do the same thing where you can take somebody like me, just whatever background you want to give me, suburb, fairly intelligent. I wouldn't say I'm like massively a genius or anything like that, but I do puzzles as well. I went to college before and I graduated high school. It's like those kinds of things where other people do the same thing. I'm not that special. And so I will say, if you take the people who've self-selected, who are already interested in cybersecurity, you give them training and mentoring, they're already going to be good enough. What you're kind of assuming by like, how do we find the right people? You're assuming that people can't be found or the people don't have the potential already. Your question, I think, is a false assumption of saying, how do we find the people with the right potential? I think everyone has potential. I think everyone is able to grow. They're not fixed in their intelligence. They're not fixed in their emotional intelligence. They can grow and improve. You just need the right environment, the right teacher, and you want to find somebody with that right level of passion and the right ability to think critically and those soft skills that are harder to teach. So I will challenge you, Jeff.
I am open to that thought, but I don't agree with it simply for the notion, and it doesn't have to be this field, but any career field that requires specialization, let's say. Does everybody have at one level, I agree with you. Everybody has the potential to be anything, but I think there's also the idea of some people are better at some things than others, or some people are driven or steered or motivated or attracted to things more than others. It doesn't necessarily have to be a skill or a talent. Maybe it's just an interest. But I know people that are brilliant at accounting and finance. Not me. I'm not a brain surgeon. Maybe I could have been one. Maybe I could have been an excellent one, but it wasn't me. So I think there's room for, and I would categorize it as people finding what they like to do, what they enjoy doing, things that excite them and hold their interest. As a layer on top of, yes, everybody has the potential to be anything. I mean, I could have grown up and been president. We all have that possibility as American citizens. And yet, very few of us are stupid enough to go that route. There, I see.
Yeah. No, I hear you, Jeff, and I partially agree with you, but then I think you're also wrong. But I do hear your argument, which is like, everybody has potential, and but there are some people who are going to have natural talent and natural aptitude. That influences your velocity of gaining skills, right? Like, how quickly are you going to gain these new skills? Going back to kind of like Naomi's question and her point, though, when I think about this problem, I think about it more of a hiring manager problem of where and it sounds like the NSA actually did their homework. They actually spent some time in this. And it sounds like when they reached out to you, Jeff, they were looking and really understood the problem they were trying to solve. And so they knew the right criteria to actually select for. Inside of InfoSec now, especially as this, corporate entity and people can make money at, oftentimes we're just being lazy, for lack of a better word. So we're saying like, oh, well, hey, somebody has to have this certification, as opposed to really understanding from a first principle standpoint, what does that certification mean? Like, what is it you actually need somebody to do on a day-to-day basis? Do you need somebody to understand anomalies inside of a data set? Well, it turns out actually understanding anomalies inside of a data set isn't something that's specific to an InfoSec person. That's actually something you can actually find people doing in a lot of other areas inside of a company. So you could be a business intelligence analyst, and part of your job is understanding anomalies inside of data. Well, wow, holy shit, you could actually be a SOC analyst. You could actually be somewhere else in the security spectrum. When it comes to things like, hey, understanding how humans interact with systems, that's like a classic problem you actually find with somebody operating an IT help desk, understanding that connection between technology and humans. Holy shit, you can be a security person. But I don't think a lot of hiring managers are doing the necessary work, because we as an industry, we have this massive ego problem. We want everybody to think what we do is magic and secret, and it takes all these years. Like the stuff that I learned as a kid, that was actually it was super simple. I mean, obviously I know now, exploits, et cetera, are much more complex because systems become more complex, but a lot of those things aren't unreasonable or unapproachable for anybody to actually get into and learn from. And we see this all the time, especially, you follow like some of the other communities. When you actually go to some place like DEF CON, you see people from all kinds of backgrounds. They have an interest in security, they had some aptitude, et cetera, but they didn't necessarily need to be a math graduate. They didn't have to, be a CS grad or anything like that. It literally is people from all walks of life. But the hiring challenge there is making hiring managers less shitty and less lazy. And for us as hiring managers to actually do a better job of making sure that we're looking for the actual capabilities that are necessary to be successful in security, as opposed to certifications or pedigrees that are necessary to be successful in security.
So let's make the hiring managers less shitty and less. That's
my new tagline. Yeah, right? I got it.
Make the hiring managers less shitty. That's awesome tagline. Yes.
I want to throw that back at you, Felie, and say, is it that we're making hiring managers less shitty, or is we as tech people are actually communicating our needs?
Ooh, maybe it's a little bit of both, but I don't think that burden should be placed on the people applying for these jobs or ICs, et cetera. Ultimately, right, a hiring manager's job is to build a good team.
It's all like spun, mutilated, spindled, I don't care how you do it, into these esoteric, arcane requirements that we have candidates trying to fill.
I know.
It's not just can't talk to the business.
It's not just this industry. Here's the point. It's not just this industry. You got to understand, and I plead the fifth. Brought it up. I was about to do it in law. But in this is in Discord, by the way. If you're not in the Discord, please join the Discord. We have great discussions in there all through the show. But here's my point that I have knowledge of, is that in law, in the legal profession, it used to be that lawyers get out of law school not knowing how to be a lawyer. They understand the law, but they don't know how to be a lawyer. It's two different things. And so they go through their first year or two of being with a firm, and everybody knew this. You were billed to clients while you were being taught how to be a lawyer. Okay, so you were helpful, you were useful, but you were about as useful as a paralegal who comes in at a much lower billing level, let's be clear. And then after a year or two, you become useful as a lawyer. So that was sort of the apprenticeship years, if you know what I'm saying. And it's not a formal or official, but we'll call it that for ease of use. And then the client started going, wait, why am I paying for these first-year lawyers? They're not doing anything for me. And so law firms stopped doing it. And so lawyers stopped getting hired right out of law school. It was, you want to come work for us? Show us your years at law firms. Like, well, I'm just out of law school. What do I do? And it's the same kind of quandary. And then you've got military people come out, and this is what I plead the fifth said. Great point, I plead. People come out of military, and they may be fantastic, and they may suck. You know, there's people in the military, they're like, hey, you can train me, but I'm going to have the contractor do the work. Somebody else, I think Dimitri said that. But I mean, it's a tough thing when you're not allowed to charge for the entry level people to learn as well as do the work that they can do. Okay, you trained Naomi. You trained your opera singer Jessica, I think her name was. Forgive me if I mangled that. As an intern, and once you trained her as an intern, which presumably she was, no offense, fairly cheap as an intern, you hired her. So, but what we need to do is have a way for people to get that experience so they can be hired, or just change the culture so they can be hired directly out of school. And I'm trying to come back to you. Forgive me. Go ahead.
You're exactly right. I mean, like, now that we know what the problem is and it's pervasive throughout different industries, like you're saying, well, like, let's do something about it. And this is what my chance is. Like, I think my whole story, my entire life was supposed to be in the FBI. Like, my entire life was built around being in the FBI. And the reason why I wanted to be in the FBI was to fight cyber criminals, and specifically get people, cyber child porn and stuff, like, capturing those guys. Like, I wanted to be a good guy fighting a bad guy. And now I realize I think my purpose in life is to still fight against cybercrime. Even though I might not be in the FBI, I could still fight against cybercrime. And I think that's what my mission on earth is to do. And I'm totally grateful for the opportunity. Is it super scary? And am I putting myself out there? Yes. But I think it's worth the risk. I think if we're going to have a future that has negligible impacts of cybercrime, I think it's worth the effort that we're putting in. And, tell that to the 800 volunteers that have signed up to help me with this cause. I think a lot of us have the same vision. We not only do we want jobs, yes, that's great, but we want to see a future that's free of cybercrime.
Naomi, you have convinced me. I need to be member 801 of this organization. So I'm so here for what you're trying to do at Cyberbreakers. And
Yep.
Totally hear you, Josh. And my perspective is that we need to change the culture. We have a shitty culture in security, and this whole gatekeeping thing is just bullshit. Everybody in security was a noob at one point. And also, I do understand your point with regards to, like, hey, it takes time for actually to up level and train, et cetera. But the reality is, especially within our industry of security, you have to do that anyway. Right. There wasn't Kubernetes, 12 years ago, but now you have to learn it. And the idea is, like, if you're in this industry, you're constantly learning. And I think it's unfair and just literally just unjustified to penalize people earlier in their career for knowledge that they don't have, because we're all in that same position today.
Yep. I'm definitely
20 years ago, there wasn't AWS. Yeah. And I still got jobs as a security practitioner.
My favorite joke about this, and it's not a joke, this is a true story, is I forget the specific technology, but a guy put it on Twitter. He goes, I applied for a job and I didn't get it because I didn't have 4 years experience with this certain technology. He goes, but I only created it 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have a bad culture, both in HR and hiring managers and hiring requisitions. How many of us talk about the HR filter? You got to get past the HR filter to get to the people that can understand you and talk to you in the language that you understand, and can actually decide whether you're going to fit their team, their technology, their needs.
I totally would go against that and say we don't have a bad culture at all. What we have is a culture that's grown with the needs that businesses have told them. So if we're telling these people the wrong thing, aren't we, like, perpetuating that culture?
Could be both.
I believe so, and I think we're both perpetuating and perpetrating. I love that. There's a lot of perpetrators in security, man. Don't get me started on that. There's a lot of perps out here in security.
So how do you feel about perpetrators in security, Flea? I just, I figure we got some time. No, never mind.
Yeah. No, but I think the whole HR filter is a cop-out. And the reason why I say that is, at least for anybody else that's like a security leader, like Naomi, et cetera, if you're a CISO, it's your job. Like you knock those things out of the way. You don't have to sit there and just say like, oh, well, the HR person says that if I hire security folks, that type of CISSP. No, you're the CISO. You get to determine what roles should be there, what those job recs should look like, what are the actual requirements you're looking for. And it's upon us as people who at least claim to know how to do risk management to actually make good risk calculations and place good bets on people. And if you really are somebody who's supposed to be a risk expert, you should be able to actually recognize that talent and understand what is going to be suitable in these roles for actually people to be successful at your company, not your HR department. If you're putting this on your HR department, you fall into that category of shitty managers that we want to get rid of.
Flea, we as security people often joke about the different C-level roles. And in fact, one of the prevailing jokes that keeps going around is that the CISO is the chief scapegoat officer, right? Everything rolls into the CISO. So could the first thing that you do as a CISO when you step into a new organization is sit down with HR and say, okay, what are your hiring requirements? How can I help you to help me be more effective? I mean, there's a lot going on when you step in, but you're right that it does fall on the CISO's shoulders. However, where does that fall? Like, where in the chain?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, the CISO owns all of it. And that's full stop, because you own the outcome of your organization. So you have to own what that hiring looks like. And I love that question just because there are so many people in HR or recruiting or however you actually want to phrase it, who would love for CISOs to actually work with them better, to actually give more specific guidance, give more details.
If only we had a CISO on the show that could weigh in on this.
Yeah. Too bad you're not letting me talk.
Sorry.
Sorry for all the mansplaining.
I do have to leave in a few seconds here, but I'll just say, like, I agree with Flea here. Like, it is on the CISO to make the change, but I also want to challenge the people who are not CISOs. You have a voice here. Your CISO is going to listen to you. If they're a security leader at all, if they're a leader at all, they will be listening to their direct reports. So I constantly try to give feedback from my direct reports. Hey, is this a kind of a role that we need, or can we talk about this person? What do you think of this person, right? And so I listen to my people. I use them as input into my decision, and you have a voice. As an individual contributor, you can say, can we get some shadows on our team? Can we build a security champions program? Can we get some interns? You, individual contributor who does not have any managerial responsibilities, you can actually do something about this job gap, this whole gap thing. Like, you have a responsibility. We all do. And so I challenge you to really focus on what you can do as a person, and not just put blame on HR or put blame on your CISO who's not doing anything, or put blame on your C-suite for not giving you headcount. You can do something. You can mentor somebody. You can pay for someone's security certifications. You can do something to help win this war.
But if the CISO ultimately owns it, wouldn't that be seen as passing the buck?
Yeah, no. You can do something. You can do something yourself. It doesn't have to be within your organization, but you can still mentor somebody. You can still help somebody out with a conversation. You can still talk to somebody, talk to a school, right? There's like little things that you can do. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm going to talk to the board today to get budget for my people. Like, that's right, but not everybody.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, as the CISO, doesn't that fall on your shoulders?
Oh yeah, that's what I was saying. Yes.
Listen, if you choose to delegate, that's fine. But wouldn't that be seen as a passing of the buck? Like, I'm too busy as a CISO. Don't bother me with these things, because
it depends on whether it works out or not.
A lot of times it is. A lot of times it is.
For the bigger, I can see that. Yeah,
we sit back as tech people and we say, well, we don't understand business decisions. We don't understand why our budget's being pulled, or why we can't bring people in, or why we can't have the tools that we need to do our job, or if we had this one thing, it would make our life so much easier. Let alone being able to go out and talk with HR and have these discussions about risk, when ultimately that falls directly on the CISO's shoulders. So wouldn't that be seen as either a denial of risk, it's not just a river, or as a transfer of mitigation? Like, walk us through that process.
Well, and
I have 10 more seconds and then I have to run.
Make this the last word. Please.
Okay, I don't condone passing the buck. Now, I will say again, it is the CISO's responsibility to hire and train the next generation, but I also believe the individual contributors have a role to play in this also. So everyone has a responsibility. Stop blaming everyone else. Again, you are the common denominator to all of your problems, including your work problems. So take responsibility, take accountability, do some self-reflection, and see what you can do to improve what we're doing here. Thanks, everyone. Thanks. I got to run.
Thanks, Naomi. I appreciate you joining us today. If you guys want to follow Naomi, she's you can find her on LinkedIn, Naomi Buckwalter. She's also on Twitter, #@ ampersand, or @ for you millennials, I need more cyber. Sorry, I come from the days of typewriters.
Did we just get typewriter splained?
We did hey, every time I open my mouth, I'm mansplaining. Think about it. Naomi had to go because she's a virtual CISO and she had work to do. But really appreciated the conversation today, in spite of the fact that I think we talked over top of her and she was very polite to let us ramble. Our bad. Tune in next week. We will be back. We will be talking to Tim Callahan. He's one of the speakers at InfoSec World, and I suspect we'll be talking about his topic. But anything goes.
Do we want to start teasing about what we're working on in the background? Something dealing with like Priya's area. Do we want to start teasing that?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
Well, that I think that effectively was a tease, but we've got a lot of fun episodes coming up in the next couple months that we're working on. We're trying to change things up a little bit and not change our format, but just do some fun, exciting, different things. So that's enough of a tease for now, gentlemen. Always good to talk to you, Josh. Get back to your kid and your vacation, Scott. I'll see you in 2 weeks after you're quarantined for a while.
Yep.
And we need to catch up with the cigar and Flea.
Sure.
I don't know when we're going to see each other, but I hope to see you sometime.
Yeah. You know, what this whole COVID thing is done, I will, escape the bunker and actually see humans in person again. So.
Well, worst comes to worst, I'm sure I'll be out. Well, assuming. Worst comes to worst, we'll be all in lockdown again. But assuming that there's a live RSA event next February, hopefully we'll all hang out then. I will give one teaser for you, Scott. We're thinking about somewhere around episode 100, if we can pull it off, trying to get all of our co-hosts together in person, in studio. Some of us have never met in person, but we would love to just get together and celebrate 100 episodes, which, coincidentally is somewhere probably in January, which is a horrible time to go to Rhode Island based on the 500th Pulse Security Weekly episode. But
oh man, that episode was epic. We literally walked in, it was clear, nothing was going on. We walk out of the studio and there's like 1.5 to 2 feet of snow on the ground. It's
it was like 2 feet of snow.
It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
Well, that's it. We should let everybody get back to their lives.
Thank you much.
I've got day job. We've all got day jobs to get back to, but we'll sign off for now. Stay safe, stay secure. Let's keep building bridges, tearing down silos, and breaking gates on Security and Compliance Weekly.